All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. So we're going to be going through several videos, and I'm going to try to make them all small bite size so that we can be really focused on what we're trying to cover. And some of this may seem trivial, and if that's the case, you could just skip over them or whatever the case may be. Um, but believe me that when you're looking to execute a trade on Monday, all this stuff will make the difference in the moment. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive into this. So, in terms of ThinkorSwim, I've had a lot of people ask me how I have it set up, and so I wanted to go through the two tabs that I'm really focused on. So, under Monitor, right, the way that I've got this set up is I have working orders expanded, and this is important because sometimes you'll place an order and it won't go through, and so you won't get the notification. You'll be wondering what's going on, and you come over to Monitor and you'll see here that it's stuck in working order. I typically wait about 30 to 60 seconds, and if the order has not hit, then I just right click or just hit cancel, and then I'll come back over to trade and I'll resubmit that. Filled orders, canceled orders, and rolling strategies, I have all that collapsed. Position statement, I have equities and equity options open. This one's kind of important because it shows you all your open positions, and it'll tell you if you're in the money or not, and that's vital when you're selling options. The only other thing that I have open here is my watch list. Again, I have this set to current account positions, and you can see here how you can change that, but that's really all I care about on a weekly basis. So that is Monitor. Like I said, pretty simple there. When I go to trades, however, there's a couple things that I want here. So I want underlying expanded. I want trade grid closed. I want option chain expanded. And then I want positions expanded. And that's it. That's all I want there. Now, a couple things people don't realize, but obviously underlying, this is the last known price or last published price. Here under options chain, you have some options that you can select. I normally leave it to 14, and then if I see that the strike that I'm targeting is not available or not displayed, I'll click all and I'll dig for it. But so some people don't realize that that's even an option. So if you come over here on options chain and you come, 1, 2, 3, 4 over, you can customize these columns. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So the only columns that I have activated are going to be delta, volume, open interest, return on risk, probability in the money, and implied volatility. For the way I trade, these are the only ones that really matter. You can make an argument for or against having volume and open interest, but mandatory are delta, return on risk or ROR, probability of in the money, and implied volatility. Those are mandatory for how I trade. So for the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to go ahead and remove volume, and I'm going to remove open interest. And this way we can see the labels a little better. Something that's important to note is that unfortunately ROR will not display on the call side, but it does display on the put side. So it's okay. I mean, you could do the math in your head, but I like to have it here when I'm selling puts. So well, let's talk about these for a second. So delta is essentially likelihood. It's not an exact number, but it's essentially likelihood. So, if this was to say 30 or negative 30 on the put side, then that means that there's a 70% likelihood that this strike is going to close out of the money, right? So you can just do that math quite quickly here and say, okay, well, if I go with a 14 strike here, there's a 30% chance that that activity is going to occur. And so, obviously the last known price or the last published price was at $11.56. If you were to go with $14 as your strike price, then yeah, there's a 70% likelihood, or I'm sorry, a 30% likelihood that it would close out of the money, because obviously it's already in the money when you did this. So this is an in the money put. And so, so I like to target between 20 and 30% delta when I'm looking to sell a put. All right. Real quick, just so that you know, in order to sell the put, you have to tag here on the bid side, not on the ask side. That would be how you bought the put. And then you can actually see here as well. So probability of in the money, you can kind of see that as well. And again, you know, delta is not an exact on this. And I would also tell you that probability of in the money is not entirely reliable either. So, you know, you kind of like take these two numbers and you kind of gauge your own risk. The other thing that I think is really important is return on risk. And so, you know, that's your ROR. This number is also not entirely accurate. So, you know, so for example, on, you know, so here it's saying it's a 2.28. That won't be exact, but it's close. And so essentially, you know, for this to be 1% with the way that I trade, it would need to be 0.11. It would need to be 11 cents since it's an $11 strike. And so you can see how these numbers don't necessarily align themselves. And we could try to find a different example real quick. But if we were to look at, let's look at MicroStrategy real quick, and let's see what we can get here. So on MicroStrategy at, so 250, it's coming back at 1.19%. And so really, you know, I always want to try to target 1% a week. And so if I see this here, I'm like, okay, I'm good. But for example, if I was to bring it to all, you know, I want to just be able to look at this at a glance and be like, okay, is it right around where I need to be? What I've found is if it's between 1.2 to 1.3, it's actually pretty close to a 1%, give or take. In this case, you see here, it's a 0.97. So it's not an exact number, but it's just a nice to have for me to guide myself and be like, okay, you know, where does it say it's 1? And then I start to do the math from there. So, you know, in trading, timing is important. And I would say in selling options, timing is less important, but it's still a factor. And so when you're looking to take the trade and making sure that you lock in your 1%, every little thing that I'm highlighting here will cut down on your lag time. So, but anyway, so again, these are the columns that I look to have. These are the mandatory ones. So how do we enter the trade? Well, we kind of covered that a second ago, but for example, I just I click the bid that I'm looking for on the strike, and then that's going to bring up this menu, and we will expand this right here, just so you can see. So this is your number of contracts. So in this case, we would look to do one contract, and so that's going to be -1. And when you click on the bid side or the sell side for the put, it's going to show it to you here as a put. It's going to show you that this is the price per contract, or I'm sorry, per share. And it's going to give you your expiration date and your strike. You would hit confirm and send. And this is still not going to confirm it. It's not going to solidify it or cement it. This is your last chance to preview before you hit send. And so here it's going to give you your credit, tell you what the exact credit is after fees. And then it's going to tell you how much buying power this is going to remove from your account. This is a cash secured put. And so it would require $22,000, $22,110.50 in the account in order to execute this trade. You would hit send if you were ready to go. In this case, I'm going to hit delete. So that serves as an example for you all as well. If you're in a situation where you don't like that, maybe the strike changed while you were in the process, because that can happen. And so you see, oh, okay, wait a second. So the credit changed on this. I don't want that. So you can delete and back out. That can happen here as well. And so once that goes through, you should get a pop-up that says that it executed. If you don't notice that, you can always come back to monitor again, and you can look under working orders and determine if it's stuck or if it went through. If it went through, it will now show up under your watch list as an open position, and it should show up under equities and equity options. Anyway, that's everything as far as ThinkorSwim is concerned for what I look to do, how I have it set up, and how I execute my trades. All right, good luck, guys.